Bumi was startled awake by a heavy slap on her back. She tried to adjust her vision to the brightness of the room, but felt another heavy slap, this time on her face. "You daughter of Jezebel, you not only brought a man into a bedroom in my house, but had the guts to fornicate with him right under my roof," Bumi heard her aunt say just after the second slap. It was then that Bumi realized that the slap had come from her aunt. Bumi was initially confused by what her aunt said, but within those few seconds, as the second slap and her aunt's angry tone sharpened her senses, her vision became clearer and she was shocked to find herself half naked and to see a man also half naked beside her on the bed. The young man on the bed had also been startled awake by the noise from Bumi's aunt. How did we get here?" Bumi and the young man asked each other both at the same time. The expression on their faces was that of shock and confusion. "Who did the both of you want to deceive?" Bumi's aunt asked in anger, saying that they were both pretending not to know how they got to the position they were in. Pretenders. Pretenders does the worst. Ayomide, Bumi's older sister, who was also in the room and also seemed so shocked by the compromising position they found Bumi and the young man, said aloud, Virgin Mary my foot, Olamide, Bumi's other older sister, also in the room, said, "I sincerely do not know how we got here. I don't know what he did to me, auntie. I have no idea and no hand in this," Bumi said, now already in tears and trying to explain to her aunt. "Oh, shut up," the young man said to Bumi in an angry tone. By the way, the name of the young man is Collins. "You gave me food to eat. You must have added something to the food to drug me and got me here," Collins said, accusing Bumi of drugging him. Bumi is the third daughter and last child of her mother, Mrs. Folashade. Mrs. Folashade and her husband were married for 9 years. Their marriage was blessed with 2 beautiful children, 2 girls, whom they named Ayomide and Olamide. But unfortunately, Mr. Wale, Mrs. Folashade's husband, passed away after a brief illness on the 9th year of their marriage. Mrs. Folashade mourned the death of her husband for 6 years and took care of her daughters all by herself. Mrs. Folashade was wealthy and had prosperous businesses, and her husband had also left behind estates and other properties behind at his death. So, Mrs. Folashade had no struggles financially in catering for her daughters. 6 years after the death of her husband, Mrs. Folashade fell in love again with a man called Gbade. Gbade appeared as an angel. He showered Mrs. Folashade with so much love, and it felt as though he was sent from heaven to fill the vacuum her late husband Wale had created when he died. Gbade was sweet. He helped Mrs. Folashade to complete work projects and contracts. He also frequently bought gifts for Folashade's children, Ayomide and Olamide, whenever he visited their house. However, Ayomide and Olamide never liked Gbade. "You are not our daddy. Go away. Stop coming to our house," they would always say and yell at Gbade whenever he visited. Folashade tried to make her daughters accept Gbade, but they did not. It bothered her, however. She accepted Gbade's proposal still when he asked her to marry him. "I know I should be concerned about my daughter's happiness, but I also need to be happy, and Gbade makes me happy. Ayomide and Olamide will grow to love and accept him one day," Mrs. Folashade tried to convince herself. But what she did not know was that Gbade was a fraud, and that all he did were his carefully laid out plans to get Folashade to fall for him and trust him. One day, Folashade had asked Gbade to go represent her in a meeting with one of her clients, as she had another meeting with another client. This was not the first time, as Gbade had always been helping her attend to contracts and other clients whenever she was busy with another one on previous times. Because she trusted Gbade, Folashade told her client to write Gbade's name on the check because she wanted Gbade to help her cash the check and deposit it in another of her bank accounts. The client did as Folashade requested, and that was the opportunity Gbade got to strike. He cashed the check and disappeared with the money. The money was about 400 million naira. Folashade never heard from Gbade again and never found him. Folashade discovered that she was pregnant 2 months later, and though her baby's father turned out to be a fraud and had eloped with her money, Folashade still showed her baby love and did not hate her, as many people who knew about her story had thought that she would. That baby girl is Bunmi. Now, though Ayomide and Olamide were young at the time, they were smart and intelligent kids, so they knew that it was Gbade who got their mother pregnant, even though Folashade did not mention it to them and chose not to discuss it with them. And having hated Gbade right from the beginning, they hated Bunmi also as well and never considered her as their sister. Ayomide and Olamide grew up to be wayward and strong-headed. They had been pampered by their late father when he was alive and were not happy when their mother would not pamper them the same way. Bunmi, on the other hand, was a calm kid and grew up a calm adult also. Ayomide and Olamide became worse even as they grew, and they never listened to their mother. They go out and to parties whenever they please and would always come back home late. If their mother tries to caution them, they would talk back at her. Ayomide and Olamide feared no one and would also challenge and talk back at any elder who attempts to correct, caution, or advise them. However, there was only one person whom they feared. Mrs. Folashade has an older cousin whose name is Bosse. All Folashade's 3 daughters call her Auntie Bosse. Auntie Bosse possessed some kind of strength that many people could barely explain. Even at her age, she could beat up any defiant youths. Many young people feared her, especially the defiant ones, as she had brought them to their knees. I would report you to Deaconess Bosse or Auntie Bosse, as some would refer to her. Some mothers would always tell their stubborn children to get them to behave whenever they were misbehaving. And some other children who had never encountered Auntie Bosse before, who underestimated her and ignored their parents' traits, got properly flogged and disciplined by Auntie Bosse. Ayomide and Olamide had also underestimated Auntie Bosse in the beginning because of her age. They kept ignoring their mother's threats and warning that she would call Auntie Bosse to come discipline them if they do not change their ways. But they were so shocked when Auntie Bosse handled the both of them and beat them up at the same time when they displayed their rudeness to her in a bid to caution them after Folashade invited her to come talk to them. Since then, Ayomide and Olamide feared Auntie Bosse greatly. Later, Folashade died as a result of breast cancer. Now, before Folashade died and during her last days, she knew that if she shared the properties she was leaving behind amongst her daughters, Ayomide and Olamide would ignore her will and would bully Bumi and take everything for themselves because they hate Bumi. So instead, she left everything in the care of Auntie Bosse, stating that her daughters only get their share of the businesses and estates she was leaving behind if only they turn a new leaf and change for good. In her will, she stated that after her demise, all 3 of her daughters must move in and live with Auntie Bosse, as that is the first condition for them to be considered for their inheritance. She also stated that only when Auntie Bosse is satisfied that a person has genuinely changed for the better and considers the person worthy to get her inheritance, would the person get the inheritance. And if there is anyone who would not change for the better, that person's inheritance should be given away to charity, and that Auntie Bosse has the liberty to kick such person out of her house and be left with their fate. So, Ayomide and Olamide had no option but to move in with Auntie Bosse when they learnt about the terms in their late mother's will. Bumi did not have much difficulty living with Auntie Bosse because she had always been a good girl, but that was not the case with Ayomide and Olamide. Auntie Bosse is also a devoted Christian and a deacon in her church, and that is why some people refer to her as Deaconess Bosse. This house is a holy place and no ungodly behavior would be tolerated. Auntie Bosse gave the 3 young ladies a stern warning when they moved in with her. And so, all 3 girls tried to obey Auntie Bosse's house rule, but Ayomide and Olamide were, however, always falling short and often get into trouble and also get scolded and punished by Auntie Bosse. You are both far older than Bumi is, but she is more sensible and God-fearing than you both are. What a shame, Auntie Bosse always say to Ayomide and Olamide. Auntie Bosse has only one child, a son, who is also well behaved because he knows that his mother was sure to deal with him and bend him if he misbehaves. Collins was a young fine man and the head of protocol in the church Auntie Bosse attends. He fell in love with Bumi because of her calm nature and because she was a good girl. Collins first became friends with Bumi for a short time, and before he proposed marriage to her, he first made his intention known to Auntie Bosse and the pastor of their church, who both gave their approval. As a Christian brother and a Christian sister, Collins and Bumi only met in church or at home under Auntie Bosse and the pastor's watchful eyes. Bumi was also a virgin, and she and Collins had agreed that they would not have sex until they are married, as it should be because they are Christians. That afternoon, Collins had visited Bumi in their house as usual. Bumi served him food and they ate together. After eating, they could not tell what had happened thereafter and were surprised to find themselves both in bed and half naked. I am disappointed at you, Bumi, and more disappointed at you, Brother Collins, Bumi's aunt, Auntie Bosse, said to them, still very angry with what she had seen. Collins insisted that he had not tried to fornicate with Bumi and that Bumi must have intentionally drugged him to have her way with him. Collins haphazardly dressed up and left their house head bowed by the embarrassment and very angry with Bumi. And because of that, he called off their engagements. Auntie Bosse reported the incident to their pastor, who suspended both Bosse and Collins from serving in their respective service department in church for a period of time as a punishment. Unknown to Auntie Bosse, it was Ayomide and Olamide who had set Bumi and Collins up, and in that compromising situation. Over the months, Ayomide and Olamide were worried that Auntie Bosse might just give all their mother's assets and properties to Bumi, since Bumi happens to be a good girl in the eyes of Auntie Bosse, and that they might just be left with nothing. They got more angry when Collins proposed marriage to Bunmi. So on that afternoon, Auntie Bose was not in the house when Collins came visiting. Ayomide and Olamide had secretly drugged the fruit juice Bunmi had brought out of the fridge, which she intended to serve to Collins. She left the pack of fruit juice on the kitchen counter and first carried the tray of food to the dining area where Collins was seated. It was at that time that Ayomide and Olamide secretly poured in the drug into the fruit juice before Bunmi could return, and which had caused Bunmi and Collins to be unconscious when they drank it. Ayomide and Olamide had pretended to go out when Bunmi and Collins were eating, but came back to the house soon when they knew that Bunmi and Collins must have fallen unconscious then. They dragged Bunmi and Collins to the bedroom, but left Collins' shoes and shirts in the living room, so Auntie Bose would find it when she returns and grows suspicious. They were happy that their plan worked out perfectly well when Auntie Bose came and saw Bunmi and Collins in that compromising position. However, they became more disappointed when Auntie Bose did not kick Bunmi out and cut her off the inheritance as they thought that she would. One evening, Ayomide and Olamide were watching a movie. In the movie, a mentally unstable man was taken away and shamed for raping a girl. Ayomide, are you thinking what I am thinking right now? Olamide asked Ayomide in the middle of the movie. What are you thinking? Ayomide asked. Well, I think that we should teach that bastard sister of hers a lifetime lesson, Olamide said. How? In what way? Ayomide asked again. Then, Olamide whispered her evil plan and idea to Ayomide. She suggested to her that they get the madman which stays in a particular unfinished building down their streets to rape Bunmi, just as they had just seen in the movie. When Ayomide asked how they could achieve this, Olamide said that they would trick Bunmi to go out with them very close to the area where the madman stays and then drug her to make her unconscious. Then, to get the madman to sleep with her, they would give him food that they would drug with a large amount of Viagra, a substance with an adverse effect to increase sexual urge, especially when taken in high amounts. Ayomide and Olamide made their plans and eventually executed it after about almost 2 weeks of their planning. They tricked Bunmi out, as they have said, and offered her a fruit they had already poisoned and placed her in the uncompleted building when she became unconscious after dressing her up in a revealing dress. Then, they waited for the madman who had initially wandered off as he does sometimes during the day. When he came, they offered him the food containing the substance by stretching it towards him. The madman accepted the food and danced into the unfinished building to enjoy his free meal. When he entered, he saw Bunmi lying unconscious on the bare floor and kicked her twice. When she did not move, he ignored her and went to the other end of the building, laughing, and continued to eat his food. Some minutes later, the effects of the drug began to take effect on the madman as he began to feel funny by the intense urge. He tried to fight it, unable to explain how he was feeling because of his insane state. He paced in the building through and through, and then he got to the place where Bunmi was lying still unconscious. The revealing dress she wore made the urge stronger, and then, after taking a look from left to right in the building, he stooped down and had his way with Bunmi. Now, all the while, Ayomide and Olamide had been hiding in a corner, waiting and watching to see if their plan would pull through. They were happy when the madman started to have his way with Bunmi. They waited for a few more seconds for him to get deep into the act, and then they began shouting to attract people to the scene because they want people to know about it, knowing that if people know about it, they will definitely speak about it, and that would cause a lifetime stigma on Bunmi. After the madman was already into the act, then they started screaming. People gathered and rushed to the scene when they heard Ayomide and Olamide screaming. The sight was despicable, and the crowd stopped the madman by hitting him with sticks and pulling him away from Bunmi. Bunmi, who was still unconscious, was rushed to the hospital to be treated by some of the people who had come to rescue her. Auntie Bosse and the doctor tried to keep the reason from Bunmi as to why she was in the hospital, but Ayomide and Olamide, in a bid to make her feel miserable as part of their plan, spilled. "Oh, sorry, Bunmi. It is so unfortunate that you got raped by the madman in our streets," they said, faking to be sad. Bunmi cried for days when she landed her feet, even after leaving the hospital. She could not believe that she had been a virgin all this while, only to be raped by a madman. She stayed indoors as whenever she stepped out, people kept pointing at her. "That is the girl who was raped by the madman," they said. Though they said it secretly and in hushed tones, their stares and gaze whenever she passed by said it aloud. Then, 4 months after the incident, Bunmi was found to be pregnant. Bunmi had not taken note of her missed periods because she had been so engrossed in her grief. Bunmi cried and cried. She wished for death. "Oh God, why? Why? Getting raped by a madman wasn't enough. You have to allow a child to be implanted in me by that madman," Bunmi cried. Bunmi, out of grief, decided that if God could allow such happen to her, then she owed God no more faithfulness, and so she decided that she was going to abort the child. Auntie Bosse tried to console her and assured her that she was going to be there to support her throughout the pregnancy and when the child is born, but Bunmi would not listen. Her mind was made up, and so one day, without anyone's knowledge, Bunmi snuck out of the house to the hospital and begged that the doctor performs a procedure to terminate the pregnancy. The doctor tried to talk her out of it, but Bunmi would not listen to the doctor also. She went to another private hospital when the first doctor would not heed to what she wants. However, the second doctor also told her that there is a high chance that she would not come out alive if she chose to go ahead to terminate the pregnancy after running some tests on her. Scared for her life, Bunmi was left with no choice but to carry the pregnancy to full term. Bunmi was delivered of a baby boy months later. Though Bunmi had been angry throughout the period of the pregnancy, holding a little baby boy in her arms right now, and seeing how cute, innocent and lovely he is, Bunmi fell in love with her baby and the anger in her disappeared. She promised herself that she was going to love her child and do her best to cater for him. Ayomide and Olamide made mockery comments from time to time, but Bunmi paid them no attention. One afternoon, Bunmi was feeding her baby when the doorbell rang. Auntie Bosse, who was also in the living room at the time, stood up to go get the door. When she opened the door, she saw 3 men standing. They told Auntie Bosse that they were there to see Bunmi. 2 of the men were middle-aged men who were in their mid-60s, but the third man with them was a younger man in his early 30s. Auntie Bosse stared at the young man for a few seconds because he looked familiar, but she could not place his face. She hesitated at the door for a while before asking them to come in. The middle-aged men introduced themselves as chiefs from Abamala Kingdom, and the young man with them as their prince and soon-to-be king. The young man spoke. My name is Prince Azubike. I don't know if you can recognize me, but if you do not, I would understand, because about 2 months ago, I was a madman for 4 years, he said. Antibose and Bumi opened their mouths, expressing shock and disbelief. It was then that Antibose knew why she felt that the young man looked familiar when he had first walked in. Bumi had also thought the same right when he walked in. Prince Azubike was the sole heir to Abamala Kingdom. When his father died 4 years ago, he was about to be crowned king when he suddenly disappeared without trace. The kingmakers and all the people of Abamala searched for him but did not find him. And after searching for him for a period of 1 year without finding him, they crowned his uncle, his father's cousin, unknown to them that it was his same uncle who had caused Prince Azubike to disappear. His uncle, in his quest to take over the throne, went to a strong juju doctor who prepared a strong juju charm that caused Prince Azubike to run mad and send him far away to the west. But the juju doctor had warned him that the birth of Prince Azubike's first son would neutralize the effects of the charm and his sanity would return. Prince Azubike's uncle laughed. Who would want to bear a child for a madman, especially in a city where no one has an idea that is even a prince? His uncle said, happy and believing that Prince Azubike would remain mad forever because nobody would want to sleep with a madman. Well, seeing that fate twisted things and made Bumi birth his child, his first son, Prince Azubike suddenly regained his sanity on the day Bumi delivered her baby. Prince Azubike, who was mad at the time, had been seized and taken to a psychiatric home by concerned members in the streets after what he did to Bumi. It was at the psychiatric hospital that he regained his sanity and returned back to his kingdom. The madness was reverted back to his uncle, who confessed to his atrocity. After hearing his uncle's confession, Prince Azubike was curious to know and find out if he indeed regained his sanity because a woman had his son, and if that was the case, to find out who this woman was. And so, he returned to the psychiatric hospital to ask questions, and further inquiry led him to Bumi. Bumi did not know how to react after the whole revelation, but one thing she felt was grateful to God that the father of her child was no more a madman. Prince Azubike thanked Bumi for having his child and asked her to be his wife and queen since she already bore his child. Bumi said yes, accepting Prince Azubike's proposal. Ayomide and Olamide, who were standing behind the kitchen door and listening to the whole conversation, were shocked. So, even our attempts to ruin her life and make her miserable forever failed, Ayomide thought aloud. Well, it wasn't just a thought, as she had said it aloud, forgetting that they were in hiding. Antibose and the chiefs heard it. Antibose dragged them out of the kitchen and asked them to confess. They didn't want to, but Antibose beat them up and forced them to confess to their crime against Bumi. And so they did. You planned this for evil, but God planned it for good. I leave you two in the hands of God to deal with you as he pleases, Bumi said to them after their confession. Bumi followed Prince Azubike to his kingdom and they got married. She became his wife and also queen after his coronation. And as for Ayomide and Olamide, they later repented genuinely and they chose to let go of everything and dedicated the rest of their lives to being nuns and serving God. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story and that you've learned something from it. I would love to know. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video. Bye.